1,500 and deteriorating rapidly.
Small boat basin. Stuck right out of the spit. The old harbor was right alongside the spit where you see the entrance now. And the land sunk 6 feet. And it also knocked down the breakwater when the earthquake hit. This one was dug out by scrapers instead of being dredged out, the usual thing for a small boat harbor. They just left the plug in it, and then afterwards they're going to take the plug out, let the water come in. It'll be ready to go this spring. This is one of the best fishery in Alaska.
Pick up fly one over the land. Right.
See that thing that goes out there at the end of the pipe? That's a pump. That's how they kept the thing dry when they were underneath the sea level, so that the scrapers and bulldozers, right, will deliver 3,500 gallons a minute. This is a rather unusual job. They really had to fight weather to get her done, but they got her done in middle of January, all but getting that plug out there. They left the plug in, Genie, so that the ice won't get in there and foul it up. This spring they'll put floats in there and they'll have their fleet in there by fall. That's Land's End you see there. The tide is low right now. Tide is high, it's right up underneath the hotel, although the hotel is raised up 6 feet from where it was originally. The road that you see there, Genie, is all underwater at high tide. The state's going to raise the elevation of the road out to the spit this spring so that it won't be flooded at high tide. All this berm that you see around the small boat harbor was taken out, excavated from the basin, and it brought the elevation around the harbor up to elevation 32 feet. Otherwise, the small boat harbor itself would get flooded at high tide. Somewhere out in here is the location, the proposed location for the chip mill that the Japanese are considering building. They'll use lumber that they harvest right around here, ship the chips to Japan for pulp. We're down to the end of the line.
The 1960 census showed a population of 1,247 people. And the last estimate that I had made here approximately a month ago indicated 1,680 people. If you'd go to find all 1,680 of these people, heaven help you, I don't think you could find them all at one time, because our community is scattered out over a bench of land that lies below the bluff here, below the sort of a plateau on behind us, 1,400 feet high, and these people are scattered out over approximately 70 square miles. Our average growth rate for the last 10, 12 years or better has been approximately 7 to 8%. And some of the people who came for the construction of the small boat basin have purchased homes and are planning to live here. The people who were out on the end of the spit, namely G.G. Sewell, who was at his new Porpoise Room restaurant, and it was getting ready to open the following day, so you could imagine he was really getting things rolling to prepare for the opening. He felt the quake, and he rushed outside the building, looked to the southwest across the spit, and saw this huge crack rumbling away and approaching him, and it went right between his legs before he could move, and his brother, who had also rushed out of the building, fell in another crevice, and someone shouted, "Look at the boat harbor." And they all turned and looked at the boat harbor as well as they could, with all the shaking going on and things moving in every direction. And there was a great vortex where the water went down, and the boats all went to the bottom. The boats were lower than the level of the surrounding water, and they saw the 1,200 or 1,400-foot rock jetty just disappear right out of sight. So it was rather a spectacular thing.
Some of the fishing boats were damaged, but, well, it's amazing. The water went right out from under them, and they banged on the bottom and rattled around like a bunch of peas in a pod, but they were repairable.
Because the tides were very irregular. We didn't know whether the spit had sunk or whether we were getting minor tidal waves or what.
Most of our damage here was not, outside the boat basin disappearing, was not spectacular like Kodiak or Anchorage or Valdez. But it's been things that upset our economy, upset our transportation patterns. And if we don't have aviation gasoline for this field, it's rather serious, because our contact with the hinterlands, in other words, with our trading area, is mostly by air. All around the bay, of course, you can go by boat, but then we don't have a small boat basin, so we go by airplane, and we do it anyway, because who wants to fool around for half a day when it's a 10-minute flight? And so we need aviation gasoline. And of course, we need fuel for the fishing boats.
We are fortunate in that it's possible from the oil fields north of us in the Kenai area to have stove oil brought down here from that area. But I don't know when the supplies of gasoline here for aviation and vehicles are exhausted. I suppose they'll have to be trucked in out of the Anchorage area or possibly over from Seward.
And until we have a facility to land this fuel, we're just not willing to wait quietly, but we are.
It seemed like nothing was going to happen, and we were sitting down here, so to speak, at the end of the road, you might say the last resort, the end of the Sterling Highway, and the feeling was we were forgotten. The reports that were noted and pictorial points indicated in various periodicals did not even mention Homer as having suffered any damage. when actually there was a substantial damage to our major point of interest and point of, I should say, port for water-oriented commerce, the Homer Spit. Well, it was an adjustment period. A good share of our merchandise comes out of the Anchorage area, and the trucking companies were unable to come here in that with surface transportation. It really hurt. Oh, this is what hurt. See, there's 113 businesses in the Homer area, and most of them are quite small businesses. They operate with very limited capital and a limited traveler or tourist season, so that this was right prior to the beginning of the 1964 tourist season, and they were unable to do some of the things they wanted to do. It was more or less of a holding action. I think probably a number of them had to borrow money from the bank to meet commitments that they had until their business could pick up again. I know there's one more church than there is liquor stores. It used to be even, now there's one more church. Well, this is true. Two of the seafood processing plants, they've operated under great difficulty. You can't get in and out to the spit because there are places on the spit that at high tide on about a 17-foot tide, there's 3 feet of water over the road. And you can't have a bunch of employees isolated out there, and well, it just doesn't work. Plus the fact that tidal action in the immediate vicinity of one cannery, that's the Pacific Alaska Seafoods, operated by Lee Shelford, has put them out of business. They're reconstructing up on the break wall around the new boat basin, which should be an improved operation all the way around.
Alaskan Seafoods is using what was his main floor now as a basement because the high tides come a little above window level, and so he's using it for a foundation to rebuild on. But he had to reconstruct above the level of his operation because it's underwater. So he's using his former cement block plant as a basement. Our port facilities have still not been replaced. There's engineering problems that are being coped with, and we all hope they'll be, and we have our fingers crossed. But it means raising 4 miles of sunken road and establishing a new pier where the steamers and tenders can get alongside. Our spit is a natural pier that runs out 4 miles out to deep water, and it must be located at deep water. So we either have to raise the one we have or have another one built. And this entails some engineering problems.
The ferry is unable to land at Homer. This offered a particular opportunity for a means to sell the abundant vegetables that are grown in this community. It's really amazing. I won't say that the largest vegetables in Alaska, I believe the Matanuska Valley holds that honor. But we do grow some excellent root crops here, and the berries, well, you just have to eat them to realize how good they are. The Alaska steamship lines, Sealand, ocean transport, and the ferry, and the Standard Oil tankers do not have a place to tie up, and this is important.
It wasn't the volume of freight that came through the port, it was the seafood landings from the fishermen that made it important. This is where we get money here, out of the water. And when we don't have access to the water, our fishermen can't land here. Then it's serious. The fact that the steamers came here Well, this supports the fishermen, but without the fishermen, without them having a place to land their catch, why, there's no reason for anything. We're not willing to wait and sit it out, but we are.
We are.
We're not willing. It's just, this is it. Well, Homer has a history of just always having gone along, and they probably always will. The particular economy here is not, at this time, and has never been related to anything but fishing, and there's always a sale for fish, and you can always catch them, even if you can't bring them home. Well, they have to take them to Kodiak or Seldovia or someplace where there are port facilities. This means that there's no processing here until they can land their fish. And it takes about 4 people to process the catch of one fisherman.
I know of a number of cases where, well, what these people are doing, some of them, they've changed their means of employment. Some of them are doing other things. Their wives are working in restaurants, and the men have gone into some of the construction. They've sort of had to modify their mode of living. And this is going to continue for at least another year, I think. As I understand, the small boat basin won't be completed till probably June, July, August, somewhere in there, with the floats and all the necessary facilities. I don't know what the answers to it, except that we're trying to get by the best way we can. We do have several things in our favor here. We have an excellent airport, a 5,080-foot paved runway. We have twice daily mail service, and of course, air transportation. In fact, we have better mail service than in most cities of this size or larger. And we have good telephone communications. We can pick up the telephone, and if we want to talk to Seattle, Washington, or Caracas, Venezuela, it's a matter of moments until we have our party on the line. One thing we have noticed in the Chamber of Commerce, that there are increased inquiries from all over the United States of young people who want to know about employment and what we do here and so forth. And I think this may be as a result of some of the publicity that has been done through the State Division of Tourism and our own chamber. But I would not overlook the potential, and actually it's real, of people who travel to Alaska, who have heard about Alaska more than ever before since statehood as a result of the earthquake of last year. And once the Sterling Highway is completed with a paved surface from the Anchorage area, I feel that we will, let's say, entice more people to enjoy the scenic beauty of this area. I've traveled Alaska from Ketchikan to Barrow in the military service, and I have never seen anything more beautiful than the Homer area. It has a combination and sort of a catch to it that's perhaps best emphasized by the Chamber of Commerce roadside sign that says Homer, Alaska, where people like to live. And it is a place where people do like to live. Most of the people here own their own homes. And this makes a big difference in the economy of the area. I think the feeling is now that things are coming right along. Salmon fishing is the predominant fishing at the moment and has been for many, many years. Several types of salmon. The other end of the fishing spectrum is the shellfish industry. And in my estimation, this offers the greatest opportunity for the fishing industry, because the reports from the Department of Fish and Game indicate that the waters of Cook Inlet and Ketchikan Bay have barely skimmed the surface as regards the potential catches that can be made. The quantities of king crab, Dungeness crab, shrimp, bottom fish such as halibut, flounder, and sole are very bountiful.
The Cook Inlet oil province is probably one of the world's most interesting to the oil industry. The oil discoveries out there are so fabulous that even the oil people don't believe it.
A syndicate of industrial people who have examined the Homer and Seward and Cordova, Valdez, and other areas of Alaska. It appears from the newspaper reports and conversation with these people that they are very seriously considering the Homer area as a point to establish their wood chip plant. Within a half a mile of the beach, there are 400 million tons of coal, one of the world's largest deposits. There's a good chance that the highway to Homer and to the Kenai Peninsula could get a major boost by the construction of the Turnagain Arm Crossing, whether it be a causeway or a bridge. It would cut off 60 miles to our area. Now, on a 226-mile run, you can see what an advantage this would be. It would put us just a matter of perhaps 3.5 hours out of Anchorage, which makes a very easy drive rather than 5.5 or 6 hours.
That both our borough and city are a new government. Our city was incorporated April 1st, April Fool's Day, right after the quake. And our new borough had only started to go into effect the first of the year. And so they were just trying to get set up shop when they had to cope with this emergency. And, well, they didn't even know how to run the ordinary day-to-day stuff. They hadn't learned to cope with that yet.
There is a bond issue now to come before the people on the 30th of March for building a water system for the main part of town. The sewer system has not yet been planned. I don't know how long it'll be before we have some planning for a sewer system, although it would seem very important if we have the water system.
We've never had a bond issue before. People are examining it with alarm. They're worried about getting in debt, $500,000. And this district and city has never been in debt. It's never had any debt. And it's a completely new concept to be in debt. So people are thinking long and hard about it. I believe most people want the water, and I believe most people don't want the debt. I wouldn't say they don't want to have to pay for them. They just don't want to go in debt.
Oh, it's not quite that bad. I don't think it's quite that bad. I think a lot of the people here who have for years struggled with wells and carrying their own water and hauling it from creeks and streams and wherever they could borrow from neighbors who did have a well, they would like to be able to afford a water system. I can think of one example. A man had a 110-foot well, and he lost it. I mean, the water disappeared, no water. So he re-drilled, but when he re-drilled, in order to obtain a comparable supply and quality of water, he had to go to 415 feet. Well, you can imagine I think the expense is $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, something like that. It's pretty nice to have a city water system that you can depend on, and the pump doesn't break down, and everything rolls right along smoothly. Saldovia has serious problems over there because they are faced with, do we have water for our homes or do we have water for those processing plants? If we don't put water into processing plants, we don't eat because we don't work. And this is real, it's no if and, it's this or this. And it's real simple. So they do without water in their homes a bit to keep those shrimp peelers and the king crab industry going. But they're getting the problem whipped.